this house as first generation immigrant parents of color in a predominantly white country would choose to live and raise children in an ethnic enclave. First of all, first generation immigrant is us. uh, there is some reasons why people move from country to country. It is because at their country they don't really have better lives and they don't really have any good job opportunities in their home country. That's why they immigrate. And first generation immigrant will tend to choose to live in an ethnic enclave. Why? It is because first, it is statistically proven that living in an ethnic enclave will make it easier for us or the first generation immigrant to find jobs because we already have connections from the people from our home country. That is why we can find jobs easier in a group of the same people, and jobs from the ethnic enclave will also have no wide standard because it is usually a specialized job that only us can do. For example, in New York City, we have the Italian ethnic enclave. We all know that Italians are usually specialized in making foods such as pizzas, pastas, and other things. Uh, yeah, I think that is why it is easy. It will be easier for us first generation immigrants if we work in our own group for better jobs. The second thing is about education. I think if we live in an ethnic enclave, it will be easier for us to learn. First of all, because we are still speaking with our own language, with our mother language. We don't speak, we don't really speak English that fluently. That is why I think it will be easier for us to learn and educate ourselves with our own language. And yeah, the reason why we want to live in an ethnic enclave is also because it will, I think it will be better for our future generations, because if we move to a new country we won't have any jobs, but if we live in an ethnic enclave it will be easier for us to find jobs and educations, and that is why we can create better lives for our future generations to live in that country. And it is also better for our future generations to live in an ethnic enclave because, yeah, for the reason that I've mentioned before, better understanding of education. Because uh, if we live in another country, we would want to teach our kids our mother language. That is the first thing that we will teach to our kids. That is why I think our kids will have better and will have better understanding of education if they learn or they study in an ethnic enclave, because we still use our mother language. And yeah, by doing so we will also preserve our culture. Even though we are in other countries, we are not in our own country, we can still teach our kids about our cultures, our language, our traditions, foods, mm, and all of our cultures to our children. And this living in an ethnic enclave will also benefit the host country. It is because if we are living in an ethnic enclave, we will find jobs easier. That means we will be productive. And if we are productive and we can find jobs and we can search money for ourselves, then there will be lower, we will not need to resort to crime. And also it will be more advantageous for the host country, because if we are productive, then they can earn more money by us paying taxes to them. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so from what we see, from what my previous speaker already mentioned, we have three main actors in today's debate. We have us as the first generation immigrants, we have our children, and we have the host country. And we will talk about, I will further explain the ideas brought up by my first speaker, and I will try to make it as clear as possible. And I will also talk about one possible opposing stance from a possible opposition in today's motion. So let me first tackle that. The first thing that, or what the biggest argument that can come from opposition side is that it would take longer for people living in ethnic enclaves to assimilate with the host country's lifestyle and way of life, culture, as well as learning the language, because we would be enclosed in our own bubble, so to speak, and we will be having the privilege of speaking our native language more than learning the host country's language. We concur that this may be true, but we also have to recognize that it is in everyone's best interest, especially our best interest and our children's best interest, for us to learn and teach to our future generation the host country's language. Because we know that we are here to create better opportunities for not only for us, but for our future generation. So we do know that no matter what, this is a main priority for us. So the possible argument that could come from the opposition side of the house is it's not going to happen. Even though we do concur it may take longer for us to assimilate, but we'll have a better environment for us to do so. Now, first of all, let's look at the side of us, the first generation immigrants. When moving to a new country, you have several problems. You don't know the language that well, you don't know culture, you don't know social cues of a different culture, and it's hard to network and get a job, and it's hard to find a job that maybe suits your specialties and capabilities. Just like the previously mentioned example of Italians in New York, even though they're not people of color, so to speak, but they have their own ethnic enclave where they give more opportunities to people of a certain ethnicity, like people who open bakeries and pizzerias, and they give more opportunities for the new generation to learn this trade and to both provide for their own community as well as for the host country. So by doing this also helps the host country. How? We pay taxes, which means we are productive and we give back to the country, and we increase economic spending, and we help that cycle flow better. Secondly, is it decreases crime, because the reason why people push towards crime is because they have nothing else and they don't have any source of income and they feel that they're forced to it. That's one of the main reasons. And now when we give people jobs, when we give people opportunities to learn and to grow and to make a living for themselves, they no longer have the need for crime. Especially, so we're not saying that this will eliminate crime 100%, but this will definitely drop the rates that it could go to, or it stops it from growing into a higher rate. Now, why is it good for our children? It's good for our children because we acknowledge that the opportunities in this host country, most probably a first world country, would be way much better than what it was in our home or native environment. So acknowledging this, we want to give them the best education and the best opportunities to set up whatever they want for the future. For example, a lot of Asian Americans now have the opportunity to pursue other things except besides becoming a doctor, besides becoming a lawyer, and besides becoming an engineer, where things that are more valued culturally in these certain areas in America, like arts, sports, music, we can broaden their future options, therefore reducing the risk of depression, reducing the risk of any mental problems or mental health problems, or just giving them the best that they can, that we can give them. Whew. Last argument, and what I would say is one of the most important arguments, is that we need to have a voice. We need to have some sort of power as immigrants, and we need to give our children that same equal power and voice. Now, what kind of power and voice am I talking about here? I'm talking about voting power to fight discrimination against a minority. And I'm not saying that this is what happens only in white-dominated countries, but this is what happens everywhere to a minority. Now, as a minority, we have to acknowledge that being together gives us strength. But in this case, what kind of strength are we talking about? We're not talking about fighting against racists physically. We're not talking about starting riots and starting a civil war. We're talking about voting for district representatives. We're talking about voting for state representatives that share our views and want to fight for us. We're talking about voting for a possible mayor that will have visions that will help not only people who are privileged, but those also coming from different ethnicities and culture, people that understand that this is what we need, and people that will fight for our vote, not only the majority vote. So when we create ethnic enclaves, we actually have this voting power. Whereas if you were to spread a certain ethnic group with certain needs all across a country, with different districts, countries, states, in different states, you would then split up the voting power. Maybe it would make sense, or maybe it wouldn't make much of a difference when we're voting for president. But when it comes to the things that really matter, it's all in a smaller level. And that's why I'm proud to propose. Thank you very much.